All right, in this video, I want to talk about a very important topic for the benefit of all of Canada. This is about the new pipeline and this type of deal going on between Alberta and the federal government, and then our weird and pathetic relationship Canada has with our Indigenous people, how we can't get anything done. You might think, oh, I'm going to blame the Indigenous for this. I'm really not. Just watch this with an open mind. Very important for Canada to get this stuff right. And it's just so dumb on many levels. We really should be able to have a pipeline that we can get oil out to other Asian countries who pay a ton for it. We get billions in tax revenue, makes the country better. Let's just see where the sticking points are and how pathetic this is.
MOU, this Memorandum of Understanding the Premier and the Prime Minister signed, says Alberta and Canada recognize their obligations to consult with and, where appropriate, accommodate Indigenous peoples. Never uses the word consent. What's your reaction of the direction being signaled by this language?
Well, we rely on the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples to be our bedrock position in regard to any and all dispositions of lands within our territories, which compels all levels of government to consult extensively with the First Nations that will be impacted. It represents the law of the land and has been a long-standing requirement for any industrial projects that are under consideration. Right. It's the gold standard.
Right. So what Tim Hodgson, the energy minister, said to me yesterday in an interview was that this agreement provides for consultation consistent with the principle of free, prior, informed consent with First Nations. So if Ottawa and Alberta and whoever an eventual pipeline proponent may be here consults with you, are there circumstances under which you would consent to a bitumen pipeline?
No, absolutely not. This is not a new issue here in British Columbia. We've had a number.
Okay, so I have to pause right there. So there's a deal between Carney and Danielle Smith saying, let's get the groundwork laid out for this pipeline. They didn't ask Indigenous, which they're supposed to. But then they ask him, is there any condition at all that we're going to have this pipeline? He just says, no, nothing. It's not happening. And then they can fight it in court and the whole thing. So on the one hand, you can say, they should consult them first. But on the other hand, a fair-minded person's going to say, but is that the attitude? Just, nope, not going to happen. Forget about it. Absolutely not. And then the other thing is, what we're not told as regular Canadians is, what is their actual problem with it? We're going to get to it, but is it going through the main area that they're living and it's going to really ruin it? Or is it they just sort of think every single pipeline by definition is bad because it'll, I don't know, stop where deers cross somewhere in the forest and they think that's bad? Or, is it actually really annoying and dangerous or whatever? So we see on a big, Canada-wide map where it's going, but we don't really know what that means because not that many people live up there. So I wish, first of all, we did a better job explaining what exactly is this going to look like and what exactly is the problem so we can have a fair opinion on it. Some of them are well, let's not have, and it's not Indigenous only, by the way. There's a lot of leftists that are just, they don't want anything. But they don't, the oil tanker ban, an oil tanker can't pick it up. Well, obviously the pipeline goes from Alberta to the West Coast and then the ships bring it to Asia, where again, we get billions of dollars from this as a country. But they're saying, oh, well, that, we can't have oil tankers go up that coast anywhere. And in my understanding, it's not like it's going on a public beach. Excuse me, not even close. So it's just really weird. And then the other thing that's pathetic is I don't like the way that we treat Indigenous people, the way they do on TV here. In a way, it's almost condescending because it's overly polite. It's the way that I remember I used to have a great grandmother, and we all treated her with she couldn't hear very well by the time she got to 100. And we were all listening. Obviously, nobody argues with her. You're overly polite. You're just yes, yes, that's wonderful. and it doesn't matter what she said, everybody's going to be in full agreement. And that's sort of the way we have these fake conversations. But I look at them like these are real people. Let's talk it out, even if we have to argue a little bit. Let's not like have this, weird fake. There's a fakeness to it.
Number of epic pipeline battles here, and they've all been vehemently opposed to any further pipeline development here in BC, and the answer remains no to any pipelines.
Well, some First Nations.
It doesn't sound super reasonable, but okay. At least give a reason, please. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but now, like, watch his attitude here, the way he talks. It's just weird.
Leaders, just to clarify that, Grand Chief, they have said yes or seem willing to say yes to a pipeline for natural gas or propane. The issue seems to be bitumen. Am I understanding the distinction correctly, that certain types of pipelines, depending on what they carry, are okay with consent and with an agreement, but it is the environmental risk of bitumen that is the non-starter here?
I think it needs to be understood that First Nations, Indigenous peoples are very strongly opposed to the fossil fuel industry and all dimensions therein, including pipelines, whatever product that they're conveying. We object to the enormous risk it represents to our traditional territories, our riparian rights.
Okay, so like he's saying that Indigenous, at least his group, is just vehemently opposed to all of it. And the thing is, but they're not opposed to wealth. They're not opposed to getting money. But like there's a disconnect where, a lot of times we get money from exporting our natural resources. So I just wish we could have a conversation, even if it gets heated sometimes, but it's like respectful both ways, where it's just like, if they say, hey, here's exactly what we don't want and why and where it can't go, and maybe where it can go that won't bother us. And then we're like, okay, well, that would be really expensive to dig through that mountain. Maybe we could put it here, whatever. We need to see that whole discussion as the Canadian populace, so we know what to vote for. We know exactly what's going on, and stop treating them like little kids. But also, that also means if something's like, nope, we're not doing that, then we have to be able to fight back publicly and be like, well, you know what? Then, this is, we're going to have less money, and that's just the way it goes. So we're just shown this little weird thing, like we're dealing with an old grandma that we have to be so nice to and tiptoe around, like, oh, is this okay? Oh, no, okay. Well, I don't know. And then we just don't get the reality. I mean, maybe there's some really good points in here that he has. And he's like, this is where the kids play, and this is where, we live, and this is how it seeps into the water, and whatever. I mean, okay, bring it up. Let's have an honest discussion about it. And we say, okay, here's how much money we get from it. Here's how much you're going to get from it. Here are the options where it can go. And here, the tanker can come this way. It's not going to be that big of a deal, like minimally disruptive, instead of taking like a zillion years to get through. And then also not having like we don't like any of it, so let's not even have it. We just can't have that level of discourse, or we're just going to be broke and poor and pathetic. We have to all step up the game, right? That's what I think. Just going to show another little clip here to really add insult to injury.
We're joined now by Riley Yesno. She is a lecturer at the University of Toronto. She's also an Indigenous rights advocate. Riley, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So after the signing of this memorandum of understanding, BC chiefs responded with a firm quote, "The answer is still no," and vowed to use every tool to stop the pipeline. That, of course, would be part of this MOU.
See, I don't want to read too much into it, but she almost looks happy that this is the case. But the thing is, she's making a full professor or whatever lecturer salary no matter what. And there's just so much of a disconnect. Like a lot of these environmental people get like Guy Beau, who just quit. He was making more than $300,000 a year with a full expense account, basically just saying no to everything.
What's your reaction to the federal government moving forward despite such strong opposition?
My reaction is that I think it affirms what a lot of First Nations and Indigenous people generally have been feeling, which is that the era of so-called reconciliation is over, or is at least significantly changing in Canada. That this is the same government that is supposedly supposed to be implementing an action plan for UNDRIP, which includes, importantly, the article about free, prior, and informed consent when it comes to passing these sorts of projects. And when you sign a memorandum of understanding saying, we are going to be looking for funding to do this, we are going to make it happen, you lose the prior part of free, prior, and informed consent. And so I think that there's a lot of frustration from First Nations, and that we should expect to see pushback both legally and on the ground should this actually materialize into a pipeline project.
And so I want to
See, like I can understand how some First Nations are kind of ticked off and they feel they're left out of the loop. I mean, for example, like do any of them care that at like a Toronto Blue Jays game they get somebody to come out and say, "Hey, we're on native land" or something, as if that's a big deal? Like, don't they just want a better life instead of all this fake, you know, posturing all the time? I can understand they don't like the fake posturing, and then we treat them like little kids, and then say, "Here's a like dirty pipeline through your backyard." But at the same time, you know, I think truth and reconciliation to me would be treating them like adults, bringing them into the mix, and saying, "Here's the real deal. Here's what we're proposing. Here are all the options." Hearing their side of it, actually listening to it, and then negotiating, fighting back and forth, even a little bit publicly, not being mean, but just having a real adult conversation about pros and cons, looking for a good solution, and just not being so dumb about the whole thing. Like, we can treat them better, but also expect more from like what they're opposing, what they're going to get. Just bring it up to an adult level of conversation, and rather than like, here's some person negotiating with their old grandma and like, "Oh, well, she said no, so I guess it's no," and just tiptoeing around it. And then I don't know, just the whole thing's a mess. I'd like to step it up. I think it's possible. If anybody's First Nation watching this in the comments, I would love to hear what you have to say. I hope you can hear in my voice. Like, I would like for Canada to have a good adult, futuristic relationship with this. It's not so pathetic. And I blame a lot of just how the relationship is on kind of woke liberals, honestly, by they just go with being fake and virtue signaling the whole time instead of listening and then pushing back and just leveling up the whole thing. So anyway, that's my rant. That's my 2 cents. Hope you liked it. Subscribe, share, leave your thoughts. I always get back to them. We'll see you in the next one.